I have no idea. I, at that point, I better be boarded. I still need to pass my specialty boards. So I have to study for that, which is quite the endeavor. I'm hoping to sit for those in 2026, although that depends on timing of a couple things as to whether or not that's a realistic goal. So I would like to have those extra letters at the end of my DVM for sure, just to validate all the time I've spent and the knowledge I've accrued. But I'd also like to see that I kind of have my hands in a bunch of different pots. I hope that when you look me up, it's not just staff veterinarian at some zoo. I'd like to be involved in international work, in mentoring students, in potentially board work, like the board of directors at zoos in the US. I think that's a great area to target if you want to actually make a change for the way that zoos are run. So I'd hope that a few different things come up when you Google me in 5 years. Being there's no place in the world that I'm happier than riding in the back of a pickup truck somewhere in Africa. There's a different kind of pace to life and the priorities are different. Getting back to a place where I feel more connected with nature in general and where I can see the impact that my work is making on a more immediate level is very healing to me. For example, when you take the horn off of a rhino, when a veterinarian, not a poacher, takes the horn off of a rhino, it's a very non-invasive procedure, and I'm happy to talk more about that in a minute if you'd like. But B, more importantly, when that rhino gets up, it is now protected from poachers. It no longer has a horn. The poachers are not going to come for that animal. You have made it safe for the next 2 years until that horn regrows.
Hello, I'm Dr. G, and today we're going to talk about what happens when your calling takes you all the way to the wild and what happens when it takes you back to yourself. I'd like to introduce Dr. Cheryl Stout, but I also finally, a year and a half later, 59 episodes in, and I finally have my wife, Dr. Amy, here. So actually, it's the Dr. Alaluf show today. Yeah. She's going to be the boss. I'm usually not. So why don't you say hi to everyone, Amy? I've told everyone about you.
Hello. I'm one of the Dr. Alalufs. Been working 25 years in small animal practice. Started with my dad and then brought Gershon on board to our place for how many years?
A long time.
A long time. So I'm excited for today to find out all about wildlife vet and conservation and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, that's my wife's second calling. So I think I'm going to be losing her to the fields of Africa. With our guest, I'd like to welcome Dr. Cheryl Stout. How you doing today?
I'm good. It's the end of my day, but it's been a good one. I'm happy to be here again, just to chat a little bit about some of the topics we have in common and maybe some things that I don't know that you can fill me in on, and vice versa.
Well, yeah, you want to learn how to do a cat neuter because you do them online. So.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing, because I know Amy was really interested in doing this type of medicine when she was in vet school.
Yeah.
And she didn't really know the correct steps to do it because this isn't, it's a hard thing to get into. It's not really the monetary outcome that can help pay off the $400,000 of debt.
True.
But Dr. Stout, why don't you tell us your whole journey? Just so anyone listening, if they're interested, you actually have the playbook.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm happy to talk about my path and sort of some of the alternative paths that could get you to the same place. But just to kind of go over where I've been, I went to Tufts for veterinary school, graduated in 2019, which I think was 6 years ago. And then after that, I always knew that I wanted to get into zoo medicine. So for me, the path was pretty clear cut from probably about midway through vet school. So I really just kind of followed the trajectory that I was set on to get myself into zoo med. And what that means is that first year out of school after I graduated, I did a small animal rotating internship, followed by a pet exotics internship, specialty internship, the second year out of school. And then from there, I was lucky enough that after only 2 internships, which seems crazy, I was able to get a residency. So then I did a 3-year residency in zoo medicine and surgery at the Wildlife Conservation Society, sometimes known as the Bronx Zoo residency. I finished that in 2024, so just over a year ago now. And then since then, I have been in a less structured kind of path. I'm taking it one day at a time and seeing where things lead me career-wise, knowing that conservation has always been what brought me into this. On a day-to-day, these days, I financially sustain myself with relief work, part small animal and also zoo relief on slightly more long-term gigs. But I'm not in a full-time job at the moment, and I don't see myself taking a full-time zoo job anytime in the near future because I'm trying to get my foot in the door in more international conservation and wildlife work. So I need that flexibility that fun employment or relief employment gives me while I try and make that happen for myself.
What was the moment where you realized that what was the spark that I don't want to work on animals that can fit on the couch? What drove you that way?
That's a great question. I don't know if there was truly a moment in time, but I will say that I think there is an entire generation of zoo professionals out there that grew up with Steve Irwin as, the person who was perpetually on the TV screen. And I was definitely one of those kids. I was watching all of the Animal Planet things, including, Emergency Vets. I don't know if you're familiar with that show that was on Animal Planet, kind of same time as the Steve Irwin, Jeff Corwin, that type of show. But I think I realized very early on that I really like learning about animals, that I really love finding out new things about new animals and finding out that there are new animals out there that exist that I've never even heard of, just kind of blew my mind. And so I kind of knew early on that I wanted to focus my career in that direction, but I had no idea how to do it. And I actually was not even pre-vet until halfway through college. I had very little direction until pretty much right before vet school, at which point I buckled down and got it together and decided that vet school was going to be the way that I could maybe make an impact on conservation long term. It wasn't really one moment. It was just kind of a lifetime of weird pets and inspiring TV personalities.
And you almost went into cardiology at Tufts, right? And then
I did.
Tuned to zoo medicine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Actually, no, I went to vet school wanting to pursue zoo and conservation. That was always plan A. But about, I don't know, maybe second year, I started coming down with all kinds of weird symptoms. And it took visits to 18 different specialists throughout vet school to figure out what was wrong with me. And I still never really got a diagnosis, but we did figure out that it was autoimmune. And when I went on immunosuppressants, I kind of thought to myself, I think I might have to take a step back from zoo medicine because, what kind of environment sometimes vet med can be. You might get exposed to a little bit more in the way of pathogens than your average person. And with zoo med, who even
Giardia. Got your monkey,
not just Giardia.
Yes. Yes. I had a bit of a come to Jesus moment in my 4th year when I was exposed to crypto on a large animal rotation while I was on immunosuppressants.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's the classic vet student story, but when you're on immunosuppressants, I realized very quickly I was going to have to be careful in the future in terms of exposure to various different zoonotic diseases. So that's when I kind of pivoted and started to look a little bit more into cardiology, which I had always loved, even before vet school. But it wasn't until my very last clinical rotation in 4th year, which was a zoo rotation, that, and coincidentally, I had just gotten off of the immunosuppressants without issue. And when those two kind of pieces of the puzzle came together at the same time, there was no looking back.
That rotation was placed perfectly where it needed to be, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
When did you decide that veterinary medicine was going to become your mission, because your path right now is very rare. I don't want to say a unicorn, but you're taking veterinary medicine to as a mission now for conservation.
Yeah.
Was that during your residency, or is that also during veterinary school?
I would say that was before vet school. When I finally decided what I wanted, that I even wanted to be a vet, I knew shortly after seeing what small animal practices were about and getting some experience in GP as well as a bunch of different specialties post undergrad. I spent some time doing that before going to vet school, which I would recommend for everybody. Getting that experience was so important. But seeing how small animal operated and the courses that I had taken as an undergrad that were very conservation and biology focused, I realized before I even started vet school that I wanted to practice on a scale that wasn't so much focused just on individual animals, but had sort of a larger purpose. That doesn't sound right. I don't want to make it sound like there's no larger purpose for the majority of veterinary medicine, but I think you know what I mean. Just a different kind of scale and priorities. So I knew going into vet school that I wanted to use more of like a population type of perspective and keep that at the forefront when deciding how to practice. But I didn't, to your point, I did not, you asked when I kind of started on this path. Like I said, I was not even a biology major until my junior year in college, which was a bit late in the game. Wow. But I had some pretty terrible science teachers in high school. And I, quite frankly, did not think that I was smart enough to do anything science-based. So I kind of gave up on all of the animal science type careers until midway through college, when I thought, let me just try this again. And it worked out.
So, I've done some roar and the snore at the local San Diego wild animal park, with the Girl Scout troop, where we stay in tents and wake up to the lions roaring, and we look out our tent and there's the giraffes. And so like, you living at the Bronx Zoo is like my dream come true. Tell me, like, what's the day in the life of a veterinary student? I guess you were a student at that point, right?
No, I was a resident.
Okay.
So for the 3 years of my residency, I lived not only in the Bronx Zoo, but in the animal hospital inside the Bronx Zoo. So basically as close to your office as you can get.
Yes.
And in some ways, it is a dream, when the park clears out and there's nobody around and you kind of have that space to yourself to walk around this beautiful park where there are still some animals out overnight. That truly was an amazing experience.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Right? Yeah, it's a little bit surreal. And I had so much fun telling people I was moving to a zoo when I got that residency.
Oh, for sure. Not everybody can say that. That's for sure.
That is for sure. But there's definitely a flip side to it, because like I mentioned, I was living inside the animal hospital where I was a resident working some pretty crazy hours. So the line between work and life, work-life balance, there was no separation. Balance is off the table because it was one. There was no in between.
So can you tell us about the alligator and the infamous bathtub
drain
plug?
Yes, I can. Yeah. This one is a Google verifiable story if you want to fact check me. But there was an alligator found in a lake in Brooklyn during my second year of residency, I believe, who was very, very sick. She was brought into us. Did I mention it was February? I don't know if I said that. That's important to the story because February in New York.
Chilly.
Yeah, exactly. Their alligators are not cold hardy. So this poor thing, she was a relatively small alligator, maybe 5 feet with her tail, was found pretty much catatonic in a lake in Brooklyn. By the time she made her way to us, when I opened the carrier, honestly, I didn't even think she was alive anymore. But if there's anything out there that's resilient, it's a reptile. So she, as it turns out, had a bathtub plug in her stomach, which was immediately apparent on my rads, which are viewable again on Google. Anyone can see big old bathtub plug right in her stomach. We weren't initially sure if it was actually in the stomach or if maybe it had perforated and was just free in the coelom. So we did a contrast study, found out, yes, in fact, it is in the stomach, but liquids can pass through the GI. And that was kind of our saving grace with this particular case because she was too sick to withstand anesthesia. Reptile anesthesia, even in a healthy reptile, can be a long endeavor. And when you slow down their metabolism further due to illness, there was no way she was going to wake up if we sedated her. So we spent a long time just kind of helping her gather strength and doing tube feedings to get some weight on her. And eventually we got to a point where we were no longer making any headway. She had plateaued, wasn't putting any more weight on despite the increase in calories. And we knew that it was time to do something. We had to get that plug out one way or another. Okay. But surgery still felt like not a great option.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. She was still very sick, very debilitated. Better, but not good. So after some conversations where initially I was quite literally laughed at, I offered my arm because she was a pretty small gator. I have pretty long, skinny arms, and I genuinely thought that I could reach the plug with my hand.
Oh my gosh.
I was told no many times, but someone in the zoo who had a different opinion than some of my superiors caught wind of the fact that I was offering, and he was pretty interested in that idea. I remember standing in a room with a bunch of vets, and they were having me pass my arm.
It is great.
Yeah, right? They were having me pass my arm through different diameter PVC pipes to see how narrow could I go. And when we realized that the PVC pipe that I had been using as a mouth block to feed her, I could easily get my arm in, that kind of became the plan B if we were not able to scope it out, which we were not able to scope it out. So I ultimately did end up pulling that bathtub plug out with my hand, which is one of the most, I don't know. Through the tube.
With her awake.
She was awake, but again, so sick that you would not know the difference between a sedated.
Did they still tie down the jaws? Or, I mean, because that's what I do with bloat dogs. You know, you put a mouth gag in there and you tie their muzzle down so you can get the stomach tube down.
Basically what we did is we took a length of PVC pipe about this long, about yay wide, vet wrapped it so that we wouldn't break her teeth when we put it in her mouth. And then once the PVC pipe was in her mouth, we vet wrapped her jaw around the PVC. So it was very stable in there. At no point, I did not feel unsafe at any point.
So this is great marketing for the zoo and for vet wrap.
Yes. Yeah. So that was one of those moments where it felt like we had won. You know, everyone in the room was so happy to see that we were able to get it. But
how fast did she bounce back after getting that out of there?
Well, so that's the other part of the story. So we scoped her before we pulled that plug out. What we didn't realize is that the plug had probably been there for a very long time, which is why she came to us so sick, so debilitated. Yeah. It wasn't full thickness, but there was some ulceration around where the plug was in contact with the mucosa of the stomach. Yeah. And so it took about 3 weeks, but unfortunately she did pass away after we removed that plug, which was so hard that we had put so much time and effort into this animal that it was that was a tough loss. But it is the perfect demonstration of why education is so important and the role that zoos can play as educators in the conservation world. Because the problem isn't that we weren't doing enough medically. The problem is that alligator was living in someone's bathtub long enough to eat a plug, get sick, and then get ditched in a completely inappropriate form. So it's all about the story, right? That's where the tragedy is, but it's also the opportunity to educate.
Right.
So do you have any cases that still take your breath away? Like, holy cow, I did that?
Oh, yeah.
What's the one that you...
I mean, that's definitely one of them. The alligator is one that will stay with me for a long time. I have It depends on what kind of a story you're looking for, because I have patients that I still think about so fondly. Some of the babies that I got to raise hold a special place in my heart. But then there are moments when you're running through the bush in Africa after a full-grown giraffe, waiting for it to trip on a tree so you can jump on its neck to keep it down while you do what you need to do and get it on a trailer for transport. And it's moments like that where it's like, how did I get here? What are we doing?
I'm in. Those are the things I would love to participate in.
Yeah.
Have you ever had time where you said, I can't do this anymore?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think halfway through my second year of residency, probably right around the time of the alligator, actually, was not sure if those things are related, but I kind of hit the trough in my journey where I was so burnt out by all the years of high intensity training that had brought me to that point. I was telling people that not only did I not want to be a zoo vet, I didn't want to be a vet anymore. My plan when they asked me, where are you going to apply? I would name a local bar, because after that residency, I was determined to do something different. And that's part of why I'm not currently working in a full-time job, because I needed to bounce back. I needed to reorganize my priorities and come back from all that cumulative burnout that 5 years of training will do to you.
How did you find the courage to come back?
Well, financially, I needed to work. So that was the first step. Was I took a few months off, completely off after my residency. I did not work a single day. I sat on the beach. I read a book. That's all I did for about 2 or 3 months. And I tried to reconnect with the people in my life, the relationships that had kind of gone by the wayside while I was a resident. And I can't even tell you how many weddings I missed, births I missed a lot of things during those 5 years.
Yeah.
So I tried to prioritize rebuilding some of those relationships and getting physiologically back to baseline in terms of stress level. And then at a certain point, I had relaxed enough and the bank account was starting to suffer. So it was time to figure something out from there. I certainly could have pivoted and actually done something not vet med related. But at that point, I sort of knew I had rebounded enough that I was wanting to go back into veterinary medicine. So that's when I started picking up small animal relief. And the zoo relief happened on its own, just word of mouth. Somebody needed help and gave me a phone call, and it's, the rest is history.
That's the best. That's the best.
Yeah.
So you being a fairly young vet, why do you think so many vets kind of struggle with asking for help or admitting that they're lost? Needing mentors, but not necessarily asking, or they go into practices that don't have anybody, these relief doctors that are 1 year out trying to pay for their $200,000 loans. What makes you not want to ask for help?
I think the expectation that no one else is can be detrimental to the way that you think you're supposed to handle something. But I also think you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. There's something to be said for paying off your debt as quickly as you can, because that will give you more freedom to enjoy your life in general. However, going straight into relief out of vet school, unless you are consistently doing relief work at a practice where you have good mentorship, and I don't just mean a vet who's more experienced than you that you can run cases by, I think you are setting yourself up for failure in that way. And even structured internships, if you don't have a true mentor there, rather than just a senior vet who is present, then the rate for burnout, I think, just it accelerates so
exponential.
exponentially.
Agreed.
So you're doing relief. You're realizing your bank account's dropping. You figure I got to get back into this. What led you to Africa?
I knew that if I wanted to not repeat that same cycle of intense work leading myself to burnout, that I needed to do something different. And conservation is what brought me here. It has always been my motivator. I want to make a difference on a slightly larger scale. So instead of just jumping into the first zoo job that was available, I really wanted to take the time to focus and see if I couldn't find a way to pursue opportunities that brought me a little bit more fulfillment rather than just money. And so that's what I've been doing this whole time is I'm still chasing opportunities. I am not where I want to be. I am not well established yet in the wildlife community, but I will be. It's going to take some time to make those connections, but I'm determined to get my foot in the door, to work internationally and actually make a difference internationally as well as in zoos in the US, which should be able to work together. That's something that I'm pretty passionate about, and that I think has the potential to be an area where I could make a big impact, is trying to marry those two.
What's it like working on animals in the field where you don't have CTs and x-rays and lab work, things to help you find the answers? Do you just go on instinct?
No pun intended.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very different kind of medicine, for sure. And you could say that about small animal medicine in a referral center versus the way that a lot of zoos operate as well, that there is sort of a difference in the standard of medicine or the expectation, although zoos are kind of fast approaching the small animal standard. But when you don't have a client paying the bill, that falls on the zoo. So sometimes financially you operate kind of more on a large animal type of model, depending on the species. And then out in the field, you often don't have any of those diagnostics that you would like to have.
Right.
So if you are truly a wildlife vet, if your bread and butter is working day in and day out in the field, then you tend to be practicing a very different kind of medicine. You're not out there managing a diabetic gibbon on a day-to-day basis. He's not going to take his insulin. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So the problems that you're seeing, able to diagnose and treat, are very different in the wildlife realm, because there's also kind of an air of don't interfere.
Right.
If it's not a human-created problem, then we probably have no place meddling. And so the types of things that you would be doing out in the field would be like getting a snare off of an animal and repairing a wound. Or, if there's a failed poaching attempt and you are able to actually make a difference for that animal, then you might immobilize and try to do whatever sort of wound repair treatments that you're able to do. But a lot of the wildlife work is more population management and translocation. So you're knocking things down to put a radio collar on, or in this population, we have too many of X, Y, and Z animals, so we need to knock them down to put a deslorelin implant in. We need birth control in this area, whereas we need more animals in that area. So a lot of it is more population management than the type of intensive medicine that would require things like a CT.
Right. I would think you'd need a lot of long-acting injectables, kind of like my cat clients that don't want to treat at all. So you're doing a lot of Depomedrol, Kenia. Now they have the Zorbium for pain control. So
Sure.
Some of those things that is just going to be in the system for a couple of weeks and hope that it works.
Yeah. You also kind of rely quite a bit on the fact that these are wild animals and their tolerance for pain is quite high. So you do what you can to make a positive impact for them without adding drugs that might impact their mental status, because that's a surefire way to feed a lion.
Yeah. Predator. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
You often called Africa your healing ground. What did it heal in you?
I think it just brought me back to my why. Being there, there's no place in the world that I'm happier than riding in the back of a pickup truck somewhere in Africa, somewhere on some dirt road. Yeah. It's just, there's a different kind of pace to life, and the priorities are different. Coming from good old New Jersey, I know I mentioned this the last time we talked, there's not a ton of wildlife out here for to be worked with and to be admired even. So getting back to a place where I feel more connected with nature in general, and where I can see the impact that my work is making on a more immediate level, is very healing to me. Yeah. For example, when you take the horn off of a rhino, when a veterinarian, not a poacher, takes the horn off of a rhino, it's a very non-invasive procedure, and I'm happy to talk more about that in a minute if you'd like. But B, more importantly, when that rhino gets up, it is now protected from poachers. It no longer has a horn. The poachers are not going to come for that animal. You have made it safe for the next 2 years until that horn regrows.
You've taken the target off their back, right?
Right.
Well, we might as well get into rhino dehorning because my wife was so intrigued by that video and the chainsaw. So we might as well go there. But there's one question before we go there I have to ask you, because I think the listeners need to hear this. How safe is it to be a veterinarian that's working on animals to protect them from poachers?
Not very. It's not very safe. It is something that I think you're not necessarily aware of when you get out there, because you don't know what you don't know. But the types of people that are specifically in the rhino horn black market, the poaching black market for rhino horn, you're not dealing with just some guy who happens to live next to a national park and owns a gun. You are dealing with international crime syndicates that are able to fund these missions. It's also not that easy to kill a rhino. You're dealing with heavy artillery. You're dealing with people that are very heavily armed and intelligent. And those are things that I didn't really think about until they were brought to my attention.
Do you have guards that travel with you?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on what you're doing and what company you're there with. The companies that I have traveled with thus far, in most cases, there have been guards present.
That would be like a necessity.
But you would need, like, it's what you're explaining, you would need the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, heavy artillery, like, crime syndicates. I mean, that's
like an army of
I don't know what a guard with like
you're right. I think luckily we rely on the fact that they don't really want to be caught either. So luckily, there's mutually, nobody wants to run into one another, right? They don't want to run into us, even if they could physically harm everyone in the group. It behooves them to stay away. I'm not sure how much having an armed guard really does in terms of protecting us. Maybe it's more a false sense of security than anything.
Right. You think it's safer, right?
Right.
So go ask your questions about the rhino dehorning.
I'm just intrigued. So, tell everybody why you do it. You kind of broached a little bit on that. And what do you do with the horn after? That's a sacred object. So what do you do with that?
So starting with your first question, just to talk a little bit about the process, because it's, I think, so misunderstood. When a veterinarian dehorns a rhino, we are doing so under sedation, and it is a pain-free, blood-free procedure, because rhino horn is not truly horn in the way that a cattle horn is. It's not bone. It's keratin. It's literally fingernail that's just like piled up on your
fingernails. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So it is more akin to a nail trim, a very intense nail trim, but more akin to a nail trim anatomically than like debudding in a calf.
Okay.
If, I can kind of relate it to large animal terms. Yeah. So what happens is these rhinos are darted with pretty potent drugs. It gets them down pretty quickly. And then in a matter of 5, maybe 15 minutes, if something has, taken extra time.
Snag it,
Exactly. Yeah. If it's a young rhino that needs some sort of, they know all of the rhinos and they have like an ear notching system, much like with pigs. So if it's a young rhino that hasn't been notched yet, it might take a little bit longer. But to actually dehorn, it takes just 2 minutes. The whole procedure from start to finish could be 6 minutes long, from the time the dart goes in to the time that we're administering reversals. We take the horn off at a level that is above the skull. So you are not getting into any areas that have innervation or blood supply. There's no blood, there's no pain. You give that reversal, the rhino is on its feet within usually 30 seconds, and they go on about their day, no worse for the wear. The important thing is
really fast. Do you run really fast when they wake up? Or?
Yes.
I'm thinking in my mind, I'm thinking Jurassic Park, must drive faster. Drive faster.
Once you're in the truck, you feel pretty all right. But I have seen people be chased up trees by angry rhinos.
Well, at least you don't have the horn anymore, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to help you when there's a tank coming your way, but still.
Yeah. Those things weigh how much
Oh, I don't even.
Ton?
More.
More.
Yeah.
Okay.
More. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe. Well, let's say about a ton. I don't know. Okay. I could be wrong. About a ton.
Okay.
So yes, I think it's important to understand that when a vet is dehorning a rhino, it is not the same as a poacher coming in with a gun and a machete,
right,
and hacking half of the face off. That is a very, very different situation. Most importantly, in our situation, they live. In the poachers, they do not.
Right.
From there, that horn will regrow. So usually dehorning has to be done about every 2 to 3 years in order to keep it small enough that it's not valuable to poachers.
Okay.
What was the second part of your question?
Oh, just the horn. Like, what do you do with that horn?
Sure. I'm sure.
A commodity.
Yeah, definitely. And just to talk about why it's a commodity, it is sometimes sold as a trophy whole, but for the most part, rhino horn is ground up into a powder and is all over the place on the black market, specifically in traditional Chinese medicine or traditional Eastern medicine. It's put into tablet form. It's put into all different forms as a powder. So it's not, even if the horn is small and not the right shape, it doesn't matter. It's still incredibly valuable to poachers because they're just going to
do. What kind of nutraceutical effects does it have?
Yeah, what are the qualities of that?
If you Google it, it treats everything from headaches to erectile dysfunction and everything in between. Like I don't know.
Get it. I need rhino horn tablets.
That is not the message of this podcast.
Wow. Okay.
But once the horn is removed, and it's important to know that I have only worked in South Africa for rhino dehorning, so I don't know what other countries do. But in South Africa, once the horn is removed, it essentially it's marked in a way that people can tell kind of where it came from. And then it goes into a vault permanently. Into a vault. It is very strictly accounted for, and it's meant to stay in that vault permanently, or at least until the government comes up with a better solution.
Okay.
And you told me they inject radiation in there, right?
That's a newer thing, and it's not, I don't think it's really a widespread practice yet, but I have heard kind of murmurs on the conservation news circuit, if you will, about the addition of radioactive components that would make that horn less desirable for obvious reasons.
Not useful for any of that.
Not only will you get rid of erectile dysfunction, you'll glow in the dark. It's pretty cool.
There you go. That might be more marketable. I don't know.
Exactly.
That's just fascinating. Fascinating.
Have you worked on any hippos?
I personally, not in a zoo setting, but I did this past time when I was in Africa, which was for an anesthesia course. We did get to see a hippo procedure, and it was a young male who was at just the right age to get kicked out of his family bloat. I'm sure dad told him to get out. And so, exactly, he went the wrong way and found himself in a farmer's kind of irrigation ditch, if you will. And the farmer did not want the hippo in his irrigation ditch. So it was more of like a quick little rescue mission to get him immobilized and get him out of the farmer's property. Went pretty smoothly, but I have so much respect for people who work with hippos, especially larger ones. This one was difficult, and he was quite small on a regular basis because they are
they
quite
stubborn?
a force.
I know they're mean.
They're mean, right? Very
Yeah.
aggressive.
Yeah.
Super territorial, huge, really thick skin, no sense of humor, absolutely no qualms about taking down a boat.
Rabies pole wouldn't work.
I don't know. If you're close enough to rabies pole, I'm not sure if you're going to live to tell the tale.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to the rhino horn, some of the questions I obviously looked into it since we talked. Don't they use the horn though for self-defense? What is the purpose of the horn on the rhino?
Thank you for asking that, because that is one of the things that I sometimes forget to explain. And I think people get most offended about the fact that we are taking away their natural defenses. So rhinos don't really have any natural predators. Babies, sure. Yes. Their defenses, though, are mom, not their own horn. Their own horn is useless. Mom is going to be their defense. So when you're taking a horn off of a rhino, you're really not making them any more vulnerable to any actual predators, because we are the only species dumb enough to take on a rhino. That said, when you start to dehorn in a certain area, it is important that you dehorn everyone, because the only other thing that might hurt a rhino is a rhino. More important in the males than the females, but the males do use their horns to spar. So you want to make sure that everybody in that area does get dehorned, so that you're not giving the ones with horns an unfair advantage over the ones who have been dehorned.
Interesting.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, now, are there any other crazy African stories like what
elephants or
like were you out there and just you're like, oh, we need to help this or help that? Our meeting, you said you went somewhere and the animal was sick and you knew it would help if you brought it back, but you couldn't.
Sure. Yeah. So again, that was this most recent time that I was in Africa for an anesthesia course. And there was a pretty sick baby rhino that would have probably benefited from being in a hospital situation rather than being at the care facility that he was at, which takes excellent care of orphaned rhinos, but it's not a hospital. The decision was made that it would not be safe to bring that animal to the hospital, because all of us who were there for the anesthesia course were essentially staying on site at the hospital. And the people who own the hospital and own the property made the decision that it would not be in any of our best interest, because it would put our physical safety at risk. Poachers would be willing to kill all of us just to get to that teeny tiny little stub of horn on that baby rhino's face.
How does that make you feel when you know you could potentially help an animal, but you just can't? Like that's got to be part of this whole conservation working in the with the wildlife.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not so much
with that.
It's tough. It is tough. Not so much with the rhino example, but you might be driving around out in the bush and you might see an animal that looks like it has an injury that you could probably help, but that is not our place. That's not the role of veterinarians in conservation, because you might be helping that individual, but are you helping the ecosystem? That animal, unfortunately, might be a meal for a predator. And as difficult as that is to stomach, that is part of the circle of life and requires an adjustment in perspective and attitude to be able to accept, compared to, I think, the way that we like to think about animals in America. But it is important, if you're going to make an impact on conservation, that you respect nature.
Yeah.
I mean, so it doesn't really fall into the two paradigms they teach you in vet school, right?
Yeah,
you either have
paradigm,
you got companion paradigm and production. I mean,
it's
wildlife.
Different. It's like a third. It's a third.
It'll be like a wildlife paradigm, I guess.
Yeah. A little bit more wildlife. I think gearing yourself, if you know that you want to work internationally with wild animals, I think the best thing you can do for yourself as a student is go over there, whether that's with a company like, so I don't want to, advertise for people, but companies do take students over there on summer missions to see what it's like to work in the field. And I do think that is a helpful experience. But in vet school, within your curriculum, making sure that you're getting both large and small animal experience, and zoo and wildlife, if that is available to you, is the best thing you can do to position yourself to follow a path somewhat similar to my own.
Well, vet school's track now. So did you track large animal?
No, I don't think Tufts tracks. I could be wrong. They could, maybe they do now, but we didn't track. And we did have a wildlife clinic associated with the school, which I was able to get involved with as a student. And that was a helpful opportunity for me as well.
Yeah, well, I told you my story about the lion and Dr. Tranquilli, but here's another Dr. Tranquilli story. Dr. Tranquilli was the anesthesiologist at Illinois, and I was out golfing with him because I always find it very important. Of course, my fiance at the time told me I was an ass kisser, but I did it just to learn more about the profession, just, make
Sure.
those networking. And he was telling me, because a bunch of geese flew over. You remember the story, Amy? And so he was hunting geese, and he knows he shot this goose, but no one could find it. And he shows up at school on Monday, and he had to anesthetize a goose in the wildlife ward because he had to remove a bullet.
And it was that goose.
It was that goose, probably.
Yeah, that probably.
So that's my one wildlife story. Amy, how much wildlife stuff did you do?
I didn't do a lot, but I did, at one point I wanted to go into exotics, and I did a lot of my externships were with like the bird vets around the area.
The fever.
So I did a lot of that. But when I got into private practice, what I realized is, my dad's practice was primarily dog and cat, and we did have some really good bird vets around, and you just kind of learn that you need completely different instruments, you need completely different things, and it was, it just ended up being easier to send these birds to, some of these better equipped bird clinics. So,
Sure.
I got out of it pretty quickly. We still have parrots that we got in vet school, and they're almost 30 years old.
Wow.
I worked at a nursery and did all that fun stuff with the birds, like pretty much my whole 4 years in vet school. So I really kind of just shifted, to just doing dog and cat because it was just easier in our area, I guess. But if I could go back again, I think I would have loved to have been a zoo vet. But again, I have my dad, and, he put me through vet school. And so I came back to work with him. He had worked, 15 years solo, 7 days a week. And so I just felt like that was just the easier path. I took the easier path. That's exactly what I did.
That's not fair. Give yourself some credit, because I think a lot of people come into vet school wanting to do wildlife, exotics, zoo.
Right. And
then deciding at some point that maybe it isn't the path that they want. And it's not because it's easier. It's because you have to give up a lot, all those weddings and baby births that I missed.
Right. And we wanted to have a family, and, that's hard. I see some of these vets on Instagram and stuff, and their kids are living in Africa with them,
Yes.
and running around the fields, and I mean, that's kind of cool too. So
very cool, very different. More credit to.
You can escape to Africa, and then good luck. If the government really wants your student loan, come find me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. I hadn't thought of that.
That's one way to pay off your loans. To all the early career professionals, just flee to Africa.
Right.
But I do think that it's a problem in the profession that we are. You may have caught when I was telling the story of how I got where I am, that I said that I did 2 internships prior to residency. That is now the bare minimum that's expected. If you're going to do a zoo residency, a lot of people end up doing 3 and then still not getting a residency. So we've created this kind of hyper specialized path where people are taking on so much training after vet school that is really, really helpful from a medical perspective. There's certainly a lot of value to it, but it also puts you at a huge disadvantage, I think, for career fulfillment, because unless you're independently wealthy, being an intern for 3+ years is going to have an impact on your ability to stay with the path and then face 3 years of residency.
Right.
So it's definitely an issue, and not just in zoo medicine, certainly
it's a sacrifice for sure.
And people are like, oh, you could put your loans on hold, but guess what? That interest just keeps adding on and adding on and adding on. And that's not an answer. And that's a problem that one of the biggest problems I feel in our profession, especially with all the research that I've been doing, is we really don't have solid answers for all these young professionals. We have a lot of Band-Aids, but there's nothing that's going to heal the problem. And I think I could just think of how emotionally and mentally exhausted you would be after one internship, forget 2 internships or even 3.
And then a residency.
And then go to a residency. I mean, that is insane. And could you imagine not getting a residency after 3 years of internship?
So many
lack of self-worth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's burnout defined perfectly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the leadership will always say, oh, we don't have enough specialists. Well, we've made it absolutely impossible
to move to that
level,
that goal. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is a huge contributor towards career dissatisfaction and people abandoning the career as a whole. Because when you had your sights set on a certain specialty and you've done everything to the best of your ability to be a good candidate, and then a computer algorithm spits out the result that you didn't match for no good reason, it's really easy to get discouraged. And it happened to so many of my friends that absolutely deserved to get positions, honestly, over me. And it just doesn't happen because it comes down to an algorithm, which is crazy.
So do you see yourself now as an adventurer, an explorer, a healer, or a veterinarian?
Oh.
Or all of the above?
All of the above. Can I be all of the above?
Geez.
Healer feels dramatic. I don't know that I would call myself a healer. That feels maybe not quite right. But veterinarian is definitely a big part of my identity. But that has such big medical implications. And I think it's important to emphasize that I'm not just interested in the medical aspects of veterinary medicine. I think it's a career that has so many applications on a global scale and on a One Health scale. So I'm more interested in using veterinary medicine in my title as a veterinarian to find ways to be an adventurer and to find ways to be a conservationist. So the veterinarian title, I think, is my key, but it's not the end all be all.
Fill in the blank. The key to animal conservation is
understanding, communication, connection. The reason I love the term conservation is because it's not purely science. Biology is huge. Medicine is huge. It's all important, but so is the social aspect, the cultural, the things that are a little bit more difficult to define. So prior to changing my path, I was a psychology major. And so what makes people tick is something that has always really interested me. And real, genuine connections with people is also something that I've always really sought after. So finding an area where I can combine that need and want to connect with people and understand people works really well for conservation, because where there is misunderstanding, you have more human-wildlife conflict, and you will never make any headway in conserving the wildlife in an area where the people are not taken care of first. It's not possible.
Wow.
That's interesting.
That's
heavy.
That was deep. That was deep. Wow. That was really deep.
Yeah.
If someone was to come up to you and say, hey, I really want to follow your path, would you tell them, yeah, go for it? or would you tell them to really think about it and maybe not do it? Because the reason I'm asking that is because Amy and I have daughters,
Mm.
and one of them wanted to go to vet school.
Mm.
And we were like, we don't think that's the right path for you.
We're just worried about the trajectory of what's happening with small animal practices, being bought out by corporations, and the downfall and the lack of mentorship and, the relief doctor and, all
the
of those
emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you say if a student reached out to you and said, I want to do this?
I have this all the time. And this is one of the reasons why I started my platform on TikTok, which is still quite small, but is growing. And I'm in contact with students all the time with this exact question. How do I do this? Can I do this? Tell me how I can get to where you are. But I think something that's really important to know about where I am is that I'm still figuring it out. I've done all of this work and I'm still figuring it out. And I am okay with that. But most people might not be. So I think I would never tell someone, don't do it. But what I would tell them is this is what the realistic picture looks like to get to the point that I am at. And you're still not guaranteed, even if you do all the right things, to get that residency. So you need to know what you're up against. Not saying that it's right, but you need to know what the system is and understand it. You need to recognize that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And when you're starting to see every year that you're going through your training, more and more of your friends put down roots, establish families, and do things that you're not going to be able to do, you have to realize that this is not a short game. And if none of that is deterring to you, then think about it. Start out, take the first step, do a rotating internship and see how you feel after that, because that might change everything for you. But I wouldn't tell anyone, don't do it. I just would be very realistic about talking about the odds and the sacrifices.
And the timing. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of schooling.
Yeah.
It is. It's crazy how much schooling she went through.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost human medicine level, if you think about it, right?
Yeah, it's exactly human medicine. Yeah.
Says the guy who's getting a second doctorate.
Yeah.
Well, I also worked in a veterinary clinic for 34 years before I did that.
All right, fair.
So yeah, we're old. Well, I'm old. She's 38. Yeah. I'm old.
I'm not 38. I wish.
Yeah. So when you look back at your journey, is there anything you would tell yourself differently? Or are you happy where your journey has taken you?
I am happy with where my journey has taken me, but it has taken time and decisions that I didn't want when they happened, like not getting a job that I really wanted in my third year of residency. I did apply for one job as a third year, and it was because it was my dream job, and I didn't get it. And I was sad about it, not devastated, but sad about it when it happened. And in hindsight, it ended up being such a good thing for me that I didn't get that job, and I am so grateful. With the path as a whole, I would take that same approach where it's taken some time and perspective to be okay with the things that this path has cost me. But I don't know that everyone would be okay with the idea of not being able to put down roots and having to be flexible to pick up relief work on a moment's notice. So it's not a path for everyone. I think that's important to know.
Yeah, but it's your path, and everything happens for a reason, right? And just like you said, you not getting that job, opened you up to other opportunities.
Definitely.
But do you have any regrets at all?
It's so hard to answer that because there are things that I would like to have done differently, especially when it comes to time spent on work versus people in my life. I think I had a really, really terrible sense of balance. balance is not even the right term. I truly cannot apply that to what I did, but I was work all the time for years. And I think I truly let some of the relationships in my life slip because I was so focused on my goal. And it's hard to say that I regret any of the big steps that I made, because I am happy with where those steps have gotten me at this point today. But I think it would have better served the people in my life and the relationships in my life if I had a better sense of balance, and the fact that zoo medicine matters a lot to me, wildlife medicine matters a lot to me, but it isn't me. It doesn't define 100% of me. Yeah.
So if we look you up in 5 years, what are you going to be doing?
I have no idea. At that point, I better be boarded. I still need to pass my specialty boards, so I have to study for that, which is quite the endeavor. I'm hoping to sit for those in 2026, although that depends on timing of a couple things as to whether or not that's a realistic goal. So I would like to have those extra letters at the end of my DVM for sure, just to validate all the time I've spent and the knowledge I've accrued. But I'd also like to see that I kind of have my hands in a bunch of different pots. I hope that when you look me up, it's not just staff veterinarian at some zoo. I'd like to be involved in international work, in mentoring students, in potentially board work, like the board of directors at zoos in the US. I think that's a great area to target if you want to actually make a change for the way that zoos are run. So I'd hope that a few different things come up when you Google me in 5 years.
Those are some good aspirations.
Yeah. Well, we've already discussed how she can do that, but that's a different conversation for a different time. I got to ask the question then: how do you prepare for your board? Like you have so many species, and you have no idea what's going to be on the board exam, correct? When you go there.
Yes and no. There's something called a job task analysis, which they use to kind of tell you what percentage of the test will focus on different topics, but we're talking broad strokes here. So like aquatics, they'll let you know what percentage is going to be aquatics versus wildlife versus companion exotics. So first of all, after you do your residency, you have to have a few publications before you're even eligible to sit for the board exam. So that is my final step. I'm trying to get this one last required publication out before I'm eligible to sit. And assuming I can do that soon and get that accepted soon, then I'll start the process of studying, which is going to be a lofty goal, because the material that they are able to pull from the exam covers the last 5 years of, I believe, 8 different journals and cover to cover 13 different textbooks. And that is all fair game.
Wow.
It's a lot of material.
Oh,
I wouldn't want to go back.
I don't know how. I mean, I'm just so. And then your published papers, are they peer-reviewed, publishable papers, or just writing for? They are. Yeah,
they have to be journal articles.
Case studies?
So there are rules about that. You can only have one case study of you have to have three published papers. You cannot have any N of 1 case reports. You have to have at least 2 if you're going to have a case report, 2 patients if you're going to have a case report. You cannot have any more than 1 case report of your 3 papers, and one of the 3 needs to be a prospective. So there's a lot of rules.
That's a lot of writing.
Yeah.
Holy moly, that's a lot of writing.
Well, that's why you've had tunnel vision for so long,
I mean,
right? Yeah.
I mean, and that's the crazy thing. All this internship, her residency, and now she still needs to that's at least a year and a half to prepare.
Yeah.
Plus you got to be publishing. I mean, our hats are off to you, because that
Thank you.
insane.
It's hard work. That is hard work.
Did you pick up a master's on the way during your residency?
I did not. No, my residency was highly, highly clinical and really not academic or didactic at all. Some residency programs are more, will offer kind of a combined degree program. Actually, I don't know if that's true of any zoo residencies that I know of, but at the very least, a lot of the academic zoo residencies will try and make sure that you publish all of your papers during your residency so that when you get out, you're at least board eligible and can start to study.
Wow. So this residency that you did, you have to be you have to be to the T, like run your life almost by an Excel spreadsheet to make sure you have everything done. Because it doesn't sound like you have anyone looking over your shoulder to help you for the board certification.
No.
Wow.
Yeah, we have mentorship in the form of seniors who are present more to talk about cases, and they can certainly provide some guidance about what it's like to take the exam because they've done it themselves. But there's really no structured timeline for when you need to publish paper 1, when you need to publish paper 2. It's just broadly encouraged, but not really structured into the program.
Yeah, man. You know what? That was one heck of an interview. Dr. Stout, I want to thank you. If people want to look you up, what is your TikTok handle? How can they find you?
My TikTok handle is Safari and Scrubs, not Safari in Scrubs. And that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. I'm pretty responsive to DMs on TikTok and in the comments as well. I'm happy to provide an email address for you. I'm not sure what we would do with that information, but on social media, TikTok is definitely the way to get in touch with me.
And if you haven't looked at her TikTok page, it's fascinating because she has all these different animals that you're like, some of them I don't even know what they were. I was like, what is that? But it's absolutely amazing. And I want to say thank you for coming on today. I definitely want to say I'm going to have you back again because I'm sure I'm going to get more questions. And if it's the only way I can get my lovely wife here, I'll have you on every other week because I think,
amazing.
She has a lot to say. And she has a lot of good, and she is a kick-ass veterinarian. And I think she worked full time, mom of 3 wonderful daughters. She's an amazing veterinarian, amazing mother, amazing wife. So it is possible. So, again, I want to thank you. And I would like to say thank you to all the listeners for listening. If you have any questions at all, just please hit us up on the comments section, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can on those. And we'll catch you next time.